We are now excited to be joined by the Auburn Daily cast here. Going to be talking some roundtable questions. Zac Blackerby of the Locked on Auburn podcast. Andrew, please tell me how to pronounce your last name again. Gosh, I am
Stefaniak. It's
Stefaniak.
Yeah,
I was going to say Stefaniak, but that's not. It's Stefaniak. I am so terrible
in there. Yeah.
I'm so terrible with names and reading in general. And then also Trey Lee, contributor at auburndaily.com. He was with us on the show yesterday. Guys, got some questions here for you. The Auburn Roundtable, we do it every single week on Friday. Let's go ahead and start here at the top. And we're going to start with Zac asking this very, very first question. Zac, what is your favorite Jabari Smith memory with the Tigers?
I mean, it's got to be, if he had to put it in one single play, it's got to be when he absolutely destroyed that guy for Jacksonville State in the first round of the NCAA tournament. What a moment. What just kind of, at the time, it felt like a culmination of, all of this offensive frustration that Auburn fans had felt watching this basketball team for the last, several months. It's like, okay, maybe they finally figured it out. That's kind of what that whole game felt like. And then obviously that didn't happen a few days later when they took on Miami. But that specific moment, if you have to do a specific moment, but, I'm sure there was a moment for everyone throughout the season where you realize just how good and just how special Jabari Smith was. I don't know when exactly that was for me, but I think the exclamation mark on his career at Auburn was that dunk against that poor man for Jacksonville State.
Andrew?
Well, Zac, that was my first instinct. My first go-to was that dunk. But I figured someone else would have it, so I wanted to go a little bit more outside the box. And I could sit here and name about 100 times that Jabari made a three-pointer, and I jumped out of my seat. But what stood out to me was that dunk against Mississippi State on that. It was the Wednesday night game when we locked up at least a share of the regular season SEC championship. And that dunk, the game was already won, but that was just the exclamation point. That was the sprinkles. And I mean, that dunk, it was just awesome. That was my favorite Jabari moment because it clinched the championship for us, and I'll never forget it.
Trey, your favorite Jabari Smith moment?
Oh, man. Both of those moments were incredible. I really enjoyed his game against Vanderbilt where he literally could not miss. That dude was on fire. And I don't know, when Jabari, he would sometimes look at the camera and almost point sometimes and you could tell he was on. And that night, that man was on freaking fire. So that Vanderbilt game was a lot of fun. It just kind of showed just all the different aspects of his game, the three-point shooting ability, his rebounding, the inside game. He's going to be the dude come NBA draft season. So I think that game really was a microcosm of his entire repertoire.
And I've got a similar stance as well. I didn't necessarily go for one individual play. I went for a whole performance. His game against Alabama the first time around, where he scored 25 points. I believe it was on 8 of 14 shooting, 3 of 6 from 3. He, like you said, Trey, in the Vanderbilt game, just displayed every single thing about his game. I think in that Alabama game as well, obviously he showed off the 3 ball. It took it to the hole a couple of times, got fouled, also had 4 blocks and a couple of steals in that game. It was just an all-around performance and just a phenomenal game from the Tigers just overall. So whenever I think of Jabari Smith, whenever I think of this team, I'm probably going to look back on that Alabama game and really, really think about just how awesome that win was in that road environment. Second question here for the roundtable, and this one's an interesting one, and this could probably spark a lot of debate, but just answering the question here, starting with Zac, what is more likely? Auburn football has only one starting quarterback this season, or 2?
That's so tough. My gut says 2. Obviously, I think no one is hoping for that. I think everyone's hoping that whoever gets the job excels, and there's no need for that. But I just think when you look at, I think the injury situation to some of these quarterbacks, it's just, you got to ask the question. With Calzada recovering from a shoulder injury, with Finley dealing with that high ankle sprain from, towards the end of last season. I mean, these are guys that have kind of gone through it before. And so I think whoever wins the job, there's going to be a slight chance that happens. I think some people would say too to this question because somebody's going to get benched. That I don't think that's really my approach to this. I just think the whole physicality of the SEC, I think it's kind of beat up these two guys already. So that's kind of my stance on this.
Andrew, 1 quarterback or 2 or 3?
Like Zach said, my gut tells me multiple. And I have arguments for I love Gurner, but he that's not going to be this year. So he's not in this debate for me. To me, it's Ashford, Finley, or the old Calzone. And I know Calzada, he's hurt. He's not going to be playing in the spring, he's not going to be playing in the spring game. He's still getting some reps. That's going to hurt him. We all can agree on that. Finley, I look at him and you just fall in love. I mean, how many times did they talk about how he's 6'7" when he was in the games last year? I mean, probably 100 times every game. But he reminds me of Josh Allen. Now he's not as mobile. But if you remember Josh Allen's first year in the NFL, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. He couldn't hit water, fell out of a boat. And, I mean, he's found it. And I think Finley can take that jump this year. I do. I believe Harsin can develop quarterbacks. I believe he has what Gus never did in that, in the way of developing quarterbacks. So if I had to pick a starter right now, I'm going to say Calzada. If I had to go with upside based off of arm talent, things like that, I love Finley. But so I would say, I'm going to say multiple, but if I had to put a dollar on it right now, I would say that Calzada starts the season as Auburn's starting quarterback, which I'm not going to complain about because I like the guy. He's going to be a good player. So,
Trey, 1 quarterback or 2?
I'm going to join the trend and go 2, sadly. I think, like we talked about yesterday, Lance, the margin between 1 and 2 is going to be so razor thin. And I'm going to disagree with Zach here and say that the reason there's 2 is because someone's going to get benched. The leash is going to be really, really short on whoever because there are options. I mean, when Bo was struggling, sometimes there weren't very many options before Finley came in. So it was kind of like, what do? You just kind of keep them out there. So I think it's 2, and it's because someone gets benched earlier in the season, and maybe the guy that is the replacement carries on and does well throughout the season.
All right. Well, before I give my answer, it's like a wild Pokemon appeared. Lindsay Crosby, Locked On MLB Prospects host and writer at Auburn Daily, has appeared. And Lindsay, we're here going through the roundtable, and we're answering the question: what's more likely? Auburn starts 1 quarterback for the entire season, or they end up starting multiple quarterbacks. Everybody except for me has given their thought. Everybody's actually said multiple quarterbacks. Lindsay, where do you stand on it?
I also say multiple quarterbacks. And for me, I think there's a scenario where you have 2, and there's a scenario where you have 3. So the scenario for 2 is something where, let's say you have a TJ Finley earns the starting job and for some reason isn't effective, or they decide to bench him. Then you have a second guy, probably a Calzada, come up and replace him. The other scenario is if a quarterback gets hurt, because I think that, to me, Finley and Calzada are in the same mold as far as more of the pocket style quarterbacks that can hang in there and can make a pass. Ashford is a different type of quarterback. And so I can see something where you have either a Finley or a Calzada. They're pretty much interchangeable to me at this point. One of them gets hurt in a game, the other one finishes that game. And then if the team decides to go to a different style of quarterback, then Ashford comes in, and you may have 3 quarterbacks in one season. But Finley, and Calzada, to me right now, you could do one, you could do both. I think you're going to have both. I think whoever they pick is probably not going to be effective enough, and they're going to want something different. And then Ashford is, again, just a whole different style of quarterback.
I think it's really reasonable to say that at some point Auburn's going to start more than 1 quarterback this season. I actually was the only person, I believe, to answer this roundtable and say 1. I'm going to say that 1 quarterback will start for Auburn this entire season. And I'm going to be honest, most of that is simply because of hope. I'm just going to hope that Auburn starts only 1 quarterback this season, but I will back it up with a legitimate answer here. Trey and I talked about this on yesterday's show, and we've talked about it a lot. here at Auburn Daily is the schedule, I think, sets up really, really well for Auburn to kind of wade into the waters of SEC play. I mean, you've got Mercer, San Jose State, Penn State, Missouri, and LSU all at home to start the season. I think whichever quarterback takes the reins early after that 5-game stretch, if they can get through it, will likely hold on to the job for the rest of the season, barring injury. And so I'm leaning towards Auburn starting one quarterback right now, again, partially because I hope it's going to happen, but also I think that the schedule sets up nicely. So that's where I stand on the quarterbacks. All right.
Who is it? Who's the one?
I'm leaning towards Zach Calzada right now, but I want to be able to see him actually out there performing, and we're not going to see him to his fullest extent during A-Day. So I think a lot of people would lean TJ Finley right now, but once Calzada gets healthy, I think he's got a legitimate shot to take the quarterback battle in the fall. But who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. All right. Third question here for the Auburn Daily Weekly Roundtable. Who will be the offensive and defensive MVPs at A-Day? And then bonus points if you can put out a special teams MVP. Zach, let's start with you.
So I forgot what I put for the article on this. I'm just going to be 100% honest on this. On offense, though, I'm thinking Malcolm Johnson Jr. I think there's a chance that he just gets one big play. That's kind of what we've seen in previous A-Days with receivers. So I'll go Malcolm Johnson Jr. for offense. For defense, I'll go Wesley Steiner because I think there's a chance that he plays with the ones sometimes. And I also think there's a chance he subs in with the twos. And so he'll get more reps and kind of more of a chance for something exciting to happen. I think he's also athletic enough where he could do something in pass coverage and maybe get a pick or something like that. So I'll go Wesley Steiner for defense. Then special teams, I will go with Marshall Myers, one of the walk-on kickers. He is also my pastor's son, so I'm incredibly biased towards him. So, yeah,
wasn't going to pull that out, but yeah, I figured you were going to go there.
There we go.
All right, Andrew, who are your 3 MVPs for A-Day, offensive, defensive, and special teams?
So for offense, this is going to be boring, but I'm going to go TJ Finley. I fully believe he's taken a step. I do. We've seen his accuracy stats so far in spring practice. I think he's taken a big step forward. He has the arm talent to where he could be unbelievable. He's just got to get more accurate. We know he can move with his legs a little bit. We didn't see it a lot last year because he was, had the ankle injury the whole time. And I still commend him. A lot of Auburn fans, want to hate on Finley, and I commend him for playing through that injury. I really do. I mean, we needed him. He wasn't successful, but he did what he could do, and I appreciate that from him. On defense, I think this might be a little out there. Since I went Finley, it's a little boring. DJ James. I watched his film when he committed. I don't think he's being talked about enough. This guy can play football. He is awesome. I think, and I don't know if this is a bold prediction. We have some okay depth at corner, but I think he's going to start at corner for us. I think he's going to be an instant impact out of the portal. I like him a lot. He's great at helping in the run game, but you don't see a lot in cornerbacks. Cornerbacks, they usually like to stay away from the run game. I think he's awesome. I think he's going to show out great in A-Day. And then for special teams, I'm going to go with my main man, Barton Lester. It's Barton Lester, right? Come on, right? Yeah, I have he's awesome. How many plays last year from a guy that you'd never heard of can you all remember Barton Lester making last year? I mean, he was awesome. So Barton Lester, he's a guy you can just tell he wants it more than the guy across the ball from him. I like him, and it's not a joke. I believe that he can help this football team on special teams because it's more important than people think. So I'm going to Barton Lester.
All right, Trey, offensive, defensive, and special teams MVP.
So I'm going to side with Andrew and stay quarterback for offense, and I'm going to go Robbie Ashford. I say Ashford because when you look at spring games, you'll get Finley, and with Calzada being out, you'll get Ashford on the other side more than likely. Ashford's going to have some of those younger guys at receiver if he's playing with the twos, and I think he can do pretty well with obviously not being able to be tackled, but it's going to hurt. I think the only knock on Ashford is he can't run more than however many yards it is in the spring game. But I think he'll be able to show some arm talent. I think he'd be able to show out pretty well in 8A. Defensive, going with the absolute unit, Eku Leota. The dude is going to wreck some defenses this fall, and I think he's going to wreck some offenses, Trey, this fall, and then he's going to start by wrecking Auburn's in the spring game. For special teams, I'm going to go Ben Patton, kicker you, baby, because Carlson's still a little banged up and McPherson's not on campus yet. So
I absolutely love it. Lindsay, offensive, defensive, special teams MVPs. Hit me.
Not going to go with the quarterback here. I think that Auburn is going to show a lot of multiple stuff on offense, a lot of multiple tight ends. And I feel like one of those two guys who's going to get a lot of attention today, at least early, is going to be Landon King. Obviously, you saw him in the Iron Bowl really step up with a clutch catch there. And he feels to me, given the questions Auburn has at receiver and the fact that he's returning, had a chance to work with multiple quarterbacks, it feels to me like Landon King's a guy that they want to show, here's what you can do. And part of it's because they're bringing in guys like Micah Riley-Ducker, but they know that after this season, John Samuel Schenker is definitely gone, and you have the chance to possibly lose some other guys in a Tyler Fromm or a Luke Deal. And so they're going to show Landon King and what he can do. When it comes to defense, I'm thinking about the linebackers, and everybody's talked about the usual suspects when it comes to linebackers. I'm thinking about a Eugene Asante. They got him for a reason. And I feel like they're going to put him in a place to be successful at 8A and to really come out and let him fly around the ball, let him show on pass coverage, show on run plays, things like that. Special teams, this is not going to happen, but this is just my choice because I insist. Jacob Quattlebaum. It is about time we make a long snapper the MVP. He nails every single snap, and my man will get recognized for it. We are getting him the trophy this year.
That's right. Jacob Quattlebaum. He the real MVP. All right. My three. I actually agree with Zach for my offensive MVP. I've got Malcolm Johnson Jr. I think Zach made a great point in the fact that it always feels like during spring games, there's this one receiver that gets like 2 or 3 catches and the two of them go for like 20 or 30 yards. I think he's going to be able to pick a couple of those up. Out of all the receivers, I would trust him to do that the most. On defense, I really, really want to hone in on Auburn's defensive line here. Obviously, Auburn's offensive line banged up a little bit. I think whoever is starting at edge is probably going to have a field day for the Tigers. I will go Eku Leota like Trey did. I think that he will be able to establish dominance during 8A, the absolute unit on the edge. And then I'll go Ben Patton for the kicker. I think there will be times in this game where Auburn stalls on offense because of their offensive line issues and because of, just trying to work some kinks out with the entire offense, actually. So I think Auburn will at times have to kick field goals, and I think Patton will get some up. So those are my 3 MVPs for 8A. A tough question here, 4th question here on the docket. What is a team that Auburn has never played in football that you would like to see them play? I actually had a few answers for this, but Zach, who would you like to see Auburn football play?
Ohio State for me. Ohio State. I'm married into an Ohio State family. My wife is from Ohio. Every now and then I'll record the Locked On Auburn podcast with an Ohio State shirt on, and people get really mad at me because there's just so much crossover. I say this sarcastically between Auburn and Ohio State. But that's the one for me for sure.
Trey?
I have to say Troy here because I got my degree there. That would be awesome. There were rumors in 2020 that they were going to try before the whole complete SEC slate was announced. But my real answer is Notre Dame because I think it would be really cool. Obviously, historic programs, somehow never faced. So Notre Dame.
Andrew?
Well, I had Cincinnati, which I then came to find out they've played twice. Auburn, leads the series 2-0. But I'm still going to say Cincinnati and look at it as if, how we always say we're the new bloods in basketball. Cincinnati's new blood, we're old blood in football. And I think it would be fun to give them a smacking, and show them what SEC football is all about. Kind of like what happened in the college football playoff. But I think it'd be a fun game. So,
Lindsay, who is your team?
So 2 things here. 1, Auburn has played Ohio State twice.
Oh, when's the last time Auburn played Ohio State?
So the first time, November 24th, 1917 in Montgomery, it was tied 0-0.
Great game.
January 1st, 1990, Auburn beat Ohio State in Tampa 31-14.
let's go.
Wow.
Bowl game. But it's been since that long, and I think there's plenty of people watching this who were not alive back then, so that's a perfectly valid answer. Trey, we're never playing Troy. That's not happening. There's nothing in it. There's nothing good that can happen for Auburn.
Yeah,
my answer actually
forever.
Yeah, my answer actually was also Notre Dame. That is just that's one of those things where I want to see a home and home with Notre Dame, kind of like we did with Ohio State, where Auburn exposes himself to a different part of the country for recruiting reasons. It becomes a trip that the fans can take, and then you can bring a classic program you've never played into your house and introduce them to what SEC football is all about. So Notre Dame for me as well.
Yeah, I would love to see Auburn go up there and beat Notre Dame by a million. But my choice here is actually Oklahoma State. I'd love to see Auburn schedule a home and home with the Pokes. I think that would be a pretty even matchup if they were to play within the next 3 or 4 years. And I'd love to see, if it were to happen, I'd love to see them play in a bowl game or something like that before Mike Gundy retires. I think that would be a really even matchup. 2 right now really good defenses, 2 decent coaches. I think that would be a really competitive and fun game. Oklahoma State versus Auburn, whether it be in a bowl, whether it be in a non-conference game scheduled later on down the road, whatever it may be. All right, final question here on the Auburn Daily Weekly Roundtable, and this is easily the toughest of them all. This is a start bench cut. All right, and it's between Chuma Okeke, Isaac Okoro, or Jabari Smith. You have to start one, bench one, and cut one. Zach?
This seems really easy to me. So I'm curious to see if all of our answers are actually different here. I think everyone's going to say start Jabari Smith. I think you bench Isaac Okoro, and I think you cut Chuma Okeke. That is, I think that's pretty straightforward from my perspective.
That's my answer as well.
Trey?
I went a different route. I started Jabari, benched Chuma, and then cut Okoro.
Walk me through that.
So I'm thinking, when I think here, I'm not really thinking NBA stuff, obviously. Sure. I'm more thinking like their peak times. And when I think of Chuma, I'm thinking of him lighting it up from the outside. And from that tournament run, I think he had a little bit better of a offensive game than Okoro did. Okoro is unbelievable on defense, but I think that offensive game may outshine the defense, in my opinion, there. So that's how I landed there.
Andrew?
Yeah, Trey, I'm with you. And it's funny because it's like picking a favorite child. I mean, all these guys are so near and dear to my heart. But yeah, Jabari, he's where he's starting. There's no debate there. I had Chuma as well, Trey, and reason being is, like you said, right now as Auburn fans, we know that offensive production is a sore subject for us right now, with how the year ended. And Chuma just got the job done on the offensive end. Now, one thing that makes this hard is we didn't get to see Isaac in the tournament, with the COVID year. And I think that could have potentially changed this answer, could had that team made a run. But and then you look at draft capital. Jabari's going to be number 1. Isaac was 5. Chuma was 16 or 17.
Yeah.
So, they're all first-round picks, almost all lottery picks. But, yeah, I'm going Chuma. He scored. He made his 3-pointers, and he didn't play as good as defense as Isaac. But, he was clutch when we needed it on that Final Four run. So that's my reasoning for that.
I'm actually starting Devin Waddell. Real ones know. But in all seriousness, I'm starting Jabari Smith, and then I'm benching Isaac Okoro, and then I'm cutting Chuma Okeke. And my reasoning for this isn't, and I've looked and I literally spent like half an hour just looking at different stats and stuff, and I went back and forth on this. I'm going to bench Okoro and start Jabari Smith for a couple of reasons. Number one, like Trey said, obviously, if you focus in on college, statistically, Chuma Okeke was the better shooter, especially from beyond the arc. But whenever you look at how they've developed, actually, Chuma has statistically regressed during his time in the NBA. And actually, Okoro is now shooting 48% from the floor and about 35.5% from three. And he's really stepped up his game so far this season for the Cavs. And so if we limit it to just collegiate stats, I would lean towards Okeke. But looking at the way that their careers have developed, I really like Okoro's game. And then on top of that, you've got the defense. So Jabari Smith starting, no brainer. And then it was a battle between Chuma Okeke, Devin Waddell, and Isaac Okoro. But unfortunately, Okoro takes the cake for me. Because again, I love the way that he's developed. Not to say Okeke's a bad player. I think he's a solid NBA player as well. I love all three of these guys. Like Andrew said, it's like picking your favorite child. But that's the direction that I took that. All right, guys, that's it. I really appreciate.
Skip Lindsay.
Oh shoot, we did skip Lindsay. Gosh.
I mean, mine's the same as Zach's.
Well, he said same here. I heard him say same.
I'm just pointing out that anybody who says it's like pick a favorite kid doesn't have more than one kid, because you can easily pick a favorite kid. Throwing it out there.
All right.
Ask me why I was late to the stream.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's hilarious. Wow. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. Really appreciate you guys coming on to the show. If you guys out there watching want to read any of these guys' content, you can check it out over at auburndaily.com. Also, Lindsay Crosby hosts the Locked On MLB Prospects podcast. You can go check him out there. Link will be in the description. And then Zac Blackerby, the Locked On Auburn podcast, his link to his show will be in the description as well. Guys, thank you so much again for coming by.
Thanks, Lance.